All right, guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today, we're bringing you the Circle of Cultivation Druid. This is from Imaria, the Pillars of Power Kickstarter. More on that later. If you're new, we're going to rate the roleplay, combat, and synergy. But let's get right into this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Sourcebook Bundle giveaway.
When I see Circle of Cultivation Druid, I'm thinking this is a farmer, right? If this is not a farmer druid that's growing plants that need to come out of the ground and go fight my little minions, we missed the boat here now. Just
yes.
Going on name alone, it's the first thing I think of.
I'm gonna zoom out here and look at this art for a second. It's got the kind of, very, very druidy feeling. Got the wooden
what else?
and the leaves.
See the artwork. What else is that going to be? Maybe like a naturey monk. Maybe. Besides that, it's
that's fair. That's fair.
Is it true?
All right.
So we've got a very, very nice, thick, juicy ability here at level 2 with Terrain Suffusion. As a bonus action, when you cast a druid spell of first level or higher, you can use part of the magic of the spell to suffuse the land with nurturing energy. You can choose a point on the ground you can see within 100 feet of you and create an area with a radius of 5 feet for each level of the spell you cast. Third level in the class, casting a second level druid spell will allow you a 10-foot radius space. You choose one option from the list below to determine what benefit is granted to the creatures of your choice standing in the created area. Each benefit can only be chosen once. You can add additional benefits to the area when it's created by either spending one hit die or suffering one level of exhaustion for each additional benefit chosen. And I know you can't hold your smile back there because you're already in love with this because it gives you options of spending hit die or exhaustion as like an extra resource to do stuff.
Yes, perfect.
So your abilities you can get looks like you're going to have a +1 bonus to your spell save DC, +1 bonus to your AC, +1 bonus to your saving throws. When a spell you cast deals damage, roll a d6, and you gain a bonus equals number rolled to one of these spell's damage rolls. When you cast a spell that restores hit points, one of your creatures of your choice targeted by the spell regains an additional 1d6 hit points, and you can't be knocked prone or moved against your will. So there's a bunch of different buffs you can choose from depending on what you want to do. So again, plenty of choices. So nothing bad there. And at the very bottom here, we have the maximum number of benefits you can have active in the area is equal to your proficiency bonus. The area lasts for 10 minutes or to use a bonus action to create a new area. That's a
lot going on there. A lot of potential. Looking at roleplay stuff, probably not too much on that. The knocked prone or moved against your will potentially could come up in a niche circumstance. The healing stuff is kind of like a niche because it lets you be more efficient with your healing, which is nice and maybe lets you free up an extra lower level spell slot for RP potentially.
Yeah, you're controlling an area when you're targeting an area with this or people within an area. So if you're doing an RP based thing, you're probably not standing still for very long. Sounds like
potentially. Yeah. So and you can get a pretty decent radius with this too, especially get higher level spell slots. Yeah, you can cover a pretty good area with that. So it's gonna be a lot of some combat options on there with bonus to spell save DC, bonus to AC. Like you put multiple on those and put any creatures of your choice as well. So not enemies, which I think is very solid.
Yeah, but that's because it honestly, with the amount of space you're going to have with bigger spells, if that was all creatures in this area, getting a bigger area of effects would be very counterintuitive.
That could be a hindrance for sure.
Be very, very. If you got past 10 or 20 foot radius, you're like, I'm only helping bad people at this point.
That's right. All right, moving on. Let's see. We got plant shape, level 6. You can assume the shape of plant creatures. You can use your wild shape feature to transform into a plant with a challenge rating as high as 2. Ignore the max CR column of the B-shaped table, but must abide by the other limitations there, which there's limitations for flying and stuff.
Yeah, flying and swimming.
Which you can't do to certain levels. Which I don't know that there's any plants that can fly off the top of my head anyways, so it's probably not an issue. Probably, but you know how it is sometimes. For the purpose of your wild shape feature, you are considered to have seen all plant creatures. All right, so you automatically know all the wild shapes, which is really nice as well. Additionally, your attack spell and plant form count as magical for the purpose of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks. Also very nice to have.
Yep.
When you reach 10th level in this class, you can choose to expend uses of your wild shape as a bonus action rather than as an action. when you do so to transform into a plant. Additionally, you can transform into a plant with a challenge rating as high as 5. Okay, so now we're getting
we're in Moon Druid territory.
Moon Druid range. Though,
but for plants.
To be fair, I don't think there's any plants that are CR5 that are as comparable to the elemental wild shapes. Because
this is probably true.
The elementals are pretty solid. But wait, there's more. When you reach 14th level in the class, you can expend 2 uses of wild shape at the same time to transform into a treant. The treant you transform into doesn't have its animate trees action. Okay, so that's good, because that would be crazy. I believe, if I remember correctly, a treant has a plus 10 to hit, which is what you would have based on wisdom. I mean, if you had a 20 wisdom and you have a plus 5 proficiency at that point, so it would chance to hit would be the same. So I don't think that's anything too crazy, but you get that extra health bar like a Moon Druid gets, which is going to be, I don't remember off the top of my head how much health a treant has. I think it's like 140-ish, which is comparable to some of those elementals that you could get as a Moon Druid. But of course, as a plant, you have some vulnerabilities and things like fire can come up, or blight. Like the spell blight just absolutely annihilates plants. So there's some things like that kind of help maybe keep it in line. So you get this kind of cool RP potential too, because there are some plants such as twig blights, which if you play Baldur's Gate 3, there's some of those in that as well, which they if they remain motionless, they are indistinguishable from plants. So there's some RP that could come into with that as well. But those are like super low CR. They're like 1/8, I think. So you're not getting any health. It'd be more like a espionage kind of RP for that.
Right. I did look very quickly to see if I could find anything that would, hit this amount. Apparently, at least in 5th edition official rules, there are 2 5 CR monsters. You have the Woodwode, which has plant camouflage. So there you go. Regeneration and tree stride, mind you. Or our personal favorite, the Enchanted Landscape, aka the Shambling Mound.
Yes, that is true. It has the engulf.
Yeah. So that's the only 2 CR5.
The Shambling Mound we have is actually pretty interesting, because I believe if it gets hit with lightning damage, it gets like buffed up. So there's some
it has
weird
lightning absorption. Whenever the Shambling Mound is subject to lightning damage, it takes no damage and regains a number of hit points equal to lightning damage.
I know things about D&D sometimes.
It resists cold and fire damage and is immune to lightning, and is also immune to being blind, deafening, or exhausted.
Yeah, that's probably going to be your go-to at level 10.
It has 60 feet of blind sight as well. So that seems like the go-to
There's some
play.
RP potential there too, yeah. Like getting around traps, if there's like fire, certain lightning traps, things, whatever, it could come into play too. So that's pretty interesting. I like that. And it gives you that alternative option to your area of effect stuff. Kind of gives you like a dabble in the Moon Druid, but not maybe as offensive. Probably maybe a little bit more on the defensive side.
It is.
All right.
So level 10, we've got Lasting Suffusion. Your ability to suffuse the land with magical energy has grown. It's an action you can spend a spell slot to use your Terrain Suffusion feature without expending its use. If you do so, you choose a number of benefits equal to the level of the spell slot spent. You can then choose additional benefits as listed in the Terrain Suffusion feature as normal. Using Terrain Suffusion in this way creates an area with a 50-foot radius and lasts a number of days equal to the level of the spell slot spent. If the Terrain Suffusion area created by this feature exists in the same area for a year, it becomes permanent with all possible benefits. Once you use your Terrain Suffusion in this way, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest.
Yeah, so it's basically in a similar vein to Teleportation Circle, I believe, is what it is. That's like if you cast it over and over again every day, you can become permanent. So if you're playing in like a long-term campaign, or something where maybe there's a lull in your campaign where you have like a 3 years later kind of deal, in your storytelling. You could have something like that where it's like, well, in those 3 years, guess what I did? I made some lasting suffusion.
Our little home, like, kind of worn down fortress we've been renovating over the months and stuff. I did this.
Right.
If anybody wants to come get us, they're gonna have a problem.
before we get to the last stuff on here with the capstone, I just want to give a little bit more information about the Kickstarter, which is just launched in the last couple days. So make sure you check that out. But this one has, of course, everything you love to see from us. Subclasses. There's 2 subclasses for each class. So that's a whole bunch of subclasses to get.
Yeah.
There's 3 new classes, lots of information, setting lore, ways to implement it into your campaign settings, magic versus anti-magic themes, chronomancy, all kinds of stuff like that. New feats, magic items, spells, all the stuff you love to see there. Factions, quest hooks to help, move players along, get stories going, things like that. Optional rules with an overhauled inspiration system and some other augmentations as well. A vehicle builder to build those airships and whatnot. And then, of course, new monsters to go ahead and throw at your players. So lots of stuff in this book. Definitely something worth checking out. There's different kinds of options for pledging. You got the settings, the module, the GM screen. They also did something interesting here is they hired a group to anime variant the whole setting. So you can play in the original fantasy setting or an anime inspired variant setting, which it's all the same material, but just in a different flavor if you're, looking for that kind of thing as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, just thought that was just an interesting point to throw out that might interest some people. Because, anime, I'm all about some anime.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look at yourself in the mirror with this one. Is that talk?
And of course, they have some awesome dice that they have from Dispel Dice designed for them as well, and a map book for 30 high-detailed battle maps. Definitely worth a look. Make sure you check out that link down below. Help support us, help support them. Always appreciative of you taking the minute to do that. All that being said, let's get back to it. Capstone here is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but pretty effective, I think, as well.
Just one little compound sentence and 1 column a period. I mean, that's a lot. I don't know if we can handle it or not.
I don't know, man. Nature's resilience. You become immune to disease and the poison condition, as well as immune to acid and poison damage. So immunity straight up to 2 damage types, which I think is pretty solid. Poison's more common, obviously, than acid, so that's going to be more beneficial more often. But just getting access to 2 of those damage types, I think, is going to really help with your survivability, just in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty versatile, I think, all around with different options that you can do to buff your party, give you a second health bar, which as a druid, always fun. That's one of why people love the moon druid so much, to do that.
This is correct.
But yeah, those are all the abilities. So let's just get right into the rating portion. First up is the roleplay asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order. Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player. We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass and how they might improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios.
That's right.
Almost butchered that, but we made it. Doing it live. So, with this in the roleplay side of things, I don't think there's a ton of roleplay. My thoughts, you get some niche potential with some of the options that you get from your level 2 ability with the terrain suffusion. And it kind of scales up as you have higher spell slots and things like that. But I think a lot of these options are pretty niche, just in general. So I don't think you're going to be getting too much in the roleplay there. Looking down at the plant stuff, I mean, again, with like the twig blights and some stuff like that, there's some potential, but probably not too much more than you already would normally have as with your wild shapes at lower levels anyway. Scouting out with birds and things like that, not too big a deal. Squirrels, rats, whatever that you would be doing anyways. The lasting suffusion could come into play, but you have to have a really specific circumstance for that to be fully effective. You have to have a long-term campaign. Of course, you can take advantage of it without that, but that you don't get the full benefit of it if you don't have something like that.
True.
Yeah. And then the capstone, really just defensive stuff. So I'm thinking with the role play,
there's a little bit of a disease and poison thing there. It can come up in your RP thing.
True.
The condition part's not the damage, obviously, but there's definitely some
right with the conditions for sure. And the disease, depending on campaign setting, could be very, very important or completely,
irrelevant.
Exactly. So you go either way with that. Just campaign dependent for that for sure. I'm leaning for like a 2.5 is my thoughts on the role play. some interesting options, but it's more on the niche side for a lot of it.
Yeah. See, I was thinking closer to the 2 range.
Okay.
Because like you said, it's a lot of niche, with really the only specific things, like if you could transform into a plant on an RP setting, but then you gotta still be clever with that, because it's not like it's an animal that you could like, oh look, it's a cute puppy, and distract people like it's where'd the flower come from? I don't know. Did you plant it? No. Like where'd it come from? Like that, how well is that actually going to be able to work? You get really creative to get a lot of RP out of this. But there is a little bit of a ceiling, I guess, if you're really creative with making that work with your wild shapes in an RP setting. The same thing with the indirect help. But I was thinking more too myself.
Yeah, I think that's fair. With some of this, it's not really focused on the role play. It's just kind of an indirect help that you get from some options that you could use if you decide to really dive into the potential of those abilities to specifically for role play. Because you could go the whole campaign and never transform into like a plant that actually helps you in RP. So
correct.
That could very easily happen. So I think a 2 is a fair roleplay rating for this.
Obviously, with the lack of roleplay focus, it is almost strictly a combat focused thing. With the first ability giving you all of these different buffs, I mean, the biggest challenge is going to be, which ones to choose, which ones do you want. At the end of the day, there's nothing individually that's, game breaking there, but it's a bunch of nice, helpful defensive stuffs, or a little bit extra damage, or some, healing, or some anti-CC. There's plenty of options there, and, you know what you're getting. The choice, if you really wanted to spend that hit die or get that one level of exhaustion to buff it an extra kick, especially the level of exhaustion, because, if the first level is really only hurting you in RP, so you're not doing a lot of checks, in RP, and you're really trying to make sure you survive this really bad combat, you're like, screw it, I'm going to get an extra buff by taking a level of exhaustion on there for everybody. I mean, especially if you're going to do a big one.
Well, yeah, you could kick it with 6 once you get to, +6 proficiency, and throw all of these, so you have all of these things bonused.
Right.
But you'd have to burn 6 hit dice to do so.
Yeah. So the options are there if you feel like it's necessary, because like I said, you're fighting some big bad, or, big chunky thing, or you're fighting a combat and you're kind of low on resources as a group, maybe worth, the extra cost. But again, the option's there, but you don't have to go, you don't have to go that in depth and take the big hits for yourself. I like the fact that there's a choice.
Sure.
Of course, being able to transform into a plant for combat in big plants specifically, I looked up because I'm thinking like the shambling mound's what came to my head, because I'm just like, what CR is that?
It's
I'm like,
very solid
5.
option.
It's the best option. Got it. At least that's what you get to 10, obviously, and you get that part of it. Because again, like you said, the lightning absorption would be just an absolute fun way to screw over some enemy caster that's not used to that. You're like, he uses call lightning, does he? Oh, I'm just going to be a piece of ground.
Yes, please.
It'd be his problem. That seems like that's a fever dream or fever nightmare in the back of my head for some silly reason. I don't know why I brought up that example specifically. Anyway, again, it's like you said, it feels like it's borrowing a little bit from Moondrip, but going into the plants, which I think is really cool, because it goes very much into that druid thing without being animal stuff. It leads into the plant side of things. While there's not a lot of plant monsters, without seeing all of the in-depth looks at what I've seen of it, I looked more in the subclass stuff and not as much of the other things. It would be really cool if they gave you at least like one more good CR4 or 5 plant monster that's new from their book to make advantage of that. I hope they did. That would be a nice add-on. Of course, then you get to 10. Your feature gets better, and you can choose to, just use the spell slot without having to use the feature itself, which is cool. And if you do that, it's big. It's really big. So they would encourage you to make them, okay, we're going all in for this one big buff, which is great. And then finally the capstone, getting immunity to 2 damages is really good. Even if acid is more rare, it still will feel it's never bad to have an immunity. And poison damage comes from so many things. Like there's so many things that shouldn't do poison damage, somehow have a way to do poison damage. And so many things that resist poison damage because they do poison damage. So it's like, it's a much better resistance to have than an offensive, damage to do. So it's a great thing to have. And the conditions, will be helpful too, especially the poison condition, because honestly, that can be worse than the poison damage is the condition that can come with it.
That can be very annoying.
So that's very, very fantastic. In my head, I'm thinking 4 on the combat side of things, primarily because I think it gets higher. It definitely gets better. That level 10 only being a once a day thing to get that full max out of feels more like a once a day thing is usually a capstone type feature. But your capstone's a passive, so your once a day thing comes from 10. So it feels like maybe it's lacking some of that crazy big excitement later on. But your level 2 is doing so much of the framework for how the subclass is built around.
Right.
But I guess the hardest part is going to be min-maxing what you get out of your level 2 thing. It's going to be a lot of this class is, aside from wild shaping into big plants.
I was leaning 4.5. And the reason for that is because I think this falls into some of the other alternative Moon Druid subclasses that we've reviewed in the past. Is like Moon Druid is very, I would say, offensive, maybe. And this leans more on the defensive side because
definitely
you're getting all these options, and you could throw down a really big, terrain suffusion that covers a huge area. You give yourself bonuses to your, your whole party AC, your spell save DC, bonus to saving throws, and then the extra healing. Depending on circumstances and things, you can't be knocked prone or moved against your will. You could do some combos with some allies to set that kind of stuff up, where your party doesn't get affected by things that do knockbacks and things. And then just the wild shape is just so crazy, especially once you get like the Treant and the Shambling Mound is just, those are fantastic. Like the blind sight, the resistances, the immunities, the blind sight, it's like, oh man, a lot of plants have blind sight too. I feel like that's very, very strong. And
I'm kind of surprised it's not Tremor Sense instead of blind, like they have the roots in the ground.
Yeah.
Mechanically, I'm surprised they call it blind sight and not Tremor Sense.
Plants don't have eyes though. They have senses.
I know. Yeah, but do earth elementals really have eyes?
They got rocks. They got stone eyes. I don't know. Don't think about it too much. It's fantasy.
Brain hurt.
Yeah. So, and then just, I don't know. I feel like you get lots of defensive options.
Oh, very much so.
So, I could go either way.
Okay. We can go 4.5. It's fine. I'm okay with it.
Where?
Okay.
I think where we go with synergy as well could be another compromise as well, because kind of just going along the same vein of things. Looking at it, the main things as a druid are, spellcasting, wild shape, are just, that is your class, just in a nutshell. Of course,
it's like clerics. You have spellcasting, you have channel divinity. What else do you have?
Right. In wild shape for non-moon druids really isn't that big of a deal usually. You usually get some little niche thing. It's
exclusively an RP thing.
A lot of times,
unless you're
like a wildfire druid or something that can summon some random thing, or spores druid or whatever. Or summoning. It's actually kind of similar to spores druid because you get the little circle area of effect ability.
A little bit.
But you're not using your wild shape to do that. You're doing it with spell slots, which is interesting too. So looking at that, and there's some interesting synergy internally, I think, with this, just between the suffusions and the spell slots, and then, being a plant inside of those things. I don't know. I was thinking originally 4.5, but I'm leaning more towards a 4 for the synergy, just because you're getting really big bonuses. It makes wild shape worthwhile, which is huge.
It does.
And then gives you alternative options with your spells, because as a druid, you're already going to be, more utility support based with your spells. And this just gives you even more options to do that.
Yeah. I've got no disagreements there. That sounds fine with me.
So 4 it is.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting subclass, I think, on here. Any other last thoughts or things you want to say about it?
I'm, again, mildly disappointed I didn't create a plant army at that point. For the cultivation, I wanted to see a bunch of conjure plants, but it to be on steroids. You just throw mobs of
a necromancer wizard, farmer druid.
I guess Spores Druid feels kind of like that, but it's no. I want an army of.
I feel like Spores Druid tries to do that, and it.
Yeah, I want an army of little plant
Mushrooms.
monsters just running his stuff going.
Little mushroom
Yeah,
people.
that'd be two one of those with spores.
I need to stop saying stuff. I might be spoiling ideas that we have down the line. But yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out this Kickstarter. Lots of cool, interesting stuff on here. You might have got a little glimpse at this other druid here because I kept scrolling down. But there's all kinds of stuff in this book. Like again, 22 or more than 20 subclasses because you get 2 for every class. So, and then all this new stuff, definitely worth taking a look at, especially if you like the stuff that we talk about on our channel. There's lots of character options in this book, and from what I've seen, looks really, really well made and well done. So always love working with people that you can tell put time and effort and thought into their creations to make stuff unique.
So I want to stress, it's not easy. It's really not.
It really isn't.
It's one thing to have a concept and you have to flush it all out and make sure it's remotely close to balanced and all the other checks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So make sure you check that out. Help us out. Help them out. Always appreciate that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.